Hi guys, we're back here with the Thinkly Ama again in the business and finance community today. And we're very lucky to have with us Nupur Gadkari. She's somebody with over 16 years of diverse marketing experience across B2B, B2C, brand marketing in various eclectic industries, like in fintech, sports, media, entertainment, consumer marketing. And she's worked with numerous global brands like Walt Disney, Mattel, EY, Castrol, with agencies and with PR firms, right? Before. So once again, Nupur, wonderful to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Vivek. It's my pleasure. And hello to everybody who's joined the webinar.
Right. Thanks a lot. So apart from your work professional and your whatever you done in the professional life, I mean, you're also part of the UN Women Delegate and proud author of Verses and Sonnets. So would love to touch upon that somewhere during our talk today. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Great. So Nupur, they always say that end of the day, sales and marketing is all about storytelling. It's always about stories about products, about brands, about companies, about stories to consumers, about how products and brands can change their lives, right? So what do you really have to think about that and say about that?
No, you're absolutely right, Vivek. A lot of times I think we get lost in the numbers and the revenue and sales targets, but it all starts with first sort of understanding the mind of the consumer. And ever since we've all been small and little, whichever geography, market or country we belong to, storytelling has been a very inherent part of our growing up. So it's somewhere what the mind of a child relates to even when you start growing up, and then when a product story or a service story or a channel story or an offer is sort of sold to the same sort of target audience in a similar manner, then that sort of brings alive the beauty of why they should listen. It sort of keeps them engaged. So I absolutely endorse the fact that it is the magic of storytelling that sort of, helps brands grow and helps them build a far more sort of recall and brand awareness over time.
Lovely. So actually when I was kind of just prepping for this, AMA session today, I thought we were going to really spend a lot of time, really talking about the brands and the products that you've been involved with. But then actually really after going through your resume, I thought probably the most interesting product or brand to talk about today would really be you. And to really talk about Nupur the person, So if it's fine with you, would love to actually touch upon that because I think there's a lot that the people on this community could learn from you.
Well, firstly, Vivek, that's very, very kind of you to say. I have never thought of it like that, to be honest. It's the first I'm hearing of it. And obviously, whatever I'm sharing is out of observations and experiences I've had in various roles that I've played in different companies.
Right.
So I think when I started out, I don't know how many people know this. Some of my closest friends do know this. I wanted to be an architect, and I wanted to sort of build buildings. And one of my inspirations to sort of get into that profession was someone in my own family who's done phenomenally well as an architect. But eventually, I started falling in love with the creative side of things because the creative element didn't go away. So creating buildings and, high rises to talking a language that consumers understand. So I always found this consumer behavior, consumer psychology, very, very interesting and intriguing. And it sort of pushed me to understand that a lot more. And that sort of opened the doors to, me getting formally educated in business management and then taking up marketing as something I am very, very passionate about today. Right. And over the years, I think I've, had the honor to sort of work alongside some great mentors in the industry, veterans and experts in their own fields, and sort of build brands from various lenses, like you, I think, rightly said, through, the lens of sports, for example, or the lens of hardcore brand marketing or hardcore channel marketing, or B2B versus B2C. And there's so much that I have learned over time that it's really great to be in a place where I think you have a lot of learning yourself being in these roles. And there is a lot of stuff that you still need to learn because that cycle sort of never ends, and both these fields, whether it's B2C marketing or B2B marketing, are ever so evolving. Every day there is something new. You talk about digital, you talk about AI, you talk about generative AI, you talk about so many things that are coming up now that it's hard to sort of, I guess, cope up and keep up pace with that. But I think for me, the inspiration has to be sort of challenging my own self in every role. And the diverse the role was, the more exciting it was for me, because there was, like I said, a part of me that could contribute to it instantly and a part of me that was eager to keep learning. So that's sort of me in a nutshell.
Wonderful. So, was your whole, idea to kind of dabble with architecture, was anything to do with reading Fountainhead or something early on in your life?
Absolutely. Oh my God. Fountainhead was the crux of, oh my God. The book is absolutely amazing, right?
Yeah.
And it was probably the thickest book I remember buying and reading. And absolutely huge inspiration, Fountainhead.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Likewise, I kind of thought about dabbling in architecture for a while. Luckily, I, eventually better sense prevailed. And, everybody wants to be that Howard Rock, right? As a protagonist. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So Nupur, I came across this wonderful talk given by you on TEDx at Warwick. And I must say it was very, very inspiring, and it was a lovely, candid talk, and I just wanted to kind of double on that, if it's okay with you, because, so, and that's when when I actually heard the talk, I said, let's really talk about Nupur the brand, Nupur the product, because what I was really impressed by, Nupur, was that the fact that you were very willing to talk about, something which is so personal to you, really talk about your vulnerabilities, your insecurities, even your dreams. I mean, even sharing dreams with strangers is a big deal, right? So, and the fact that you set the context of the talk, talking about like how life is a movie, how each one of us thinks, we are the protagonists in that movie, right? I love that, right? So what was the inspiration for you to kind of, really showcase this like this?
It's a great question, Vivek. So I think what I realized over time was, in life, very few things matter. None of the achievements you've had matter as much. None of the big laurels and medals you can flaunt beyond a point. But what really matters is peace of mind and happiness. And for a large part of my life, I think I struggled, and I'm, being as candid as I was on my TED talk. I did struggle quite a lot with both these things because it was somewhere sort of diluted. It wasn't here, neither there. And I was trying very hard to find a space where both of these come together. And so writing sort of helped me channelize a lot of my emotions. And this is the time when, as most teens are going through lots of changes by themselves, whether they are physical, mental, emotional, getting involved in, let's say, social groups, finding your, circle of friends. There were so many external factors as well as internal factors that were playing a role while all of these things were happening. So I think, what inspired me to write about it and then get it published and then also talk about it on TED is I realized that there is an element of bravery that I wasn't touching upon. There is an element of honesty, which very much exists in my story, but maybe I hadn't shared. And a lot of people sometimes look for this. Like I've had people, when I used to share some of my, verses on Instagram, and before it even became a book, I used to get a lot of people writing to me saying, this is what I needed to hear today. Or you have literally written an episode of what I'm going through right now. And that's when I realized that some of these things and moments can be a friend to lean on. The poems can be a friend to lean on. A set of poems which becomes a book can be someone to lean on and find comfort in. A talk might just help somebody say, you know what, it's not the end of the world. Because I have reached that moment a lot of times in my life where I feel like, bas ho gaya, this is it, and everything's come to an absolute standstill. But I don't know what it was in me. I think it was, if I'm very honest with you, I would hit rock bottom and then say, okay, that's it. This is not me. I can't be this person. And then you power through. And as they say, once you hit rock bottom, the only direction you can move in is upwards. And so whether you call it resilience, and there are all of these really amazing terms for it, but it's that moment of realization that, are you accepting yourself in this very moment? And if the answer is no, then do something about it. So
Right.
I think it became very important for me to share that, because I know everybody right now, even on this call, I'm sure, is going through something. And some of these stories and nuggets and snippets sometimes just help be that boost of, the fuel you need to just get through a day. And the fact that everyone is showing up, the fact that they wake up every day with a purpose, I think in itself is a big achievement, and it's not easy to do that every time. So I felt it was very important to sort of get that out there. That was the inspiration.
No, and I'm glad you did. In fact, I would urge everybody to kind of go and check out the talk. And, in fact, I kind of took away some very interesting observations. And, whatever I'm going to obviously share, this is to the community, that whatever I'm going to share here is obviously there on TED. So, it's obviously a lot of stuff is personal, but I think that's what Nupur has already shared. So, I love the fact when you talked about, act one, scene one, right? And, and the fact that, how you saw this whole balance of, or this whole tension about good happening in your life, and then there's something negative that happened in your life, right? I mean, and that's pretty much been the theme, So the fact that, how you believe that every Disney movie was something real. I'm a romantic at heart, and I believe they're all real, right? All these stories are great, And the fact that you were really focused about breaking the glass ceiling, right? And then you really encountered, I would say, a trauma of sorts, or really the difficult time when your parents decided to separate, right? That you shared on the talk, right? But what really amazed me is that instead of, really wallowing in self-pity and really about feeling sad about it, how you actually decided to be the parent to your siblings. You were only 14 years of age. Your siblings, if I recollect right, were around 8 to 10 years younger to you at that point in time, right? And you decided really to be the parent, and I was really wondering, which something that you actually asked a rhetorical question yourself in the talk, but even I wanted to really know, who asked you to do all of this? What made you feel accountable and responsible for this? Because it was a choice that you had to make, and I would love to understand. Yeah.
It was. I think for me, I just realized, I think there was a very honest point, and I remember this now that you're asking me. I was just sitting in my room and I was taking stock of what this means now. And it's almost like, in school, you used to have this 5-mark answer, distinguish between, and I literally did a distinguish between my life and the life of my siblings.
Right.
And points were very clear, like have someone to come home to, may or may not have someone to come home to. Have simple things like tiffins and food ready, may or may not have, and my dad was around, of course. He flew with an airline, but these are the moments when he wasn't, and we used to probably sometimes depend on my grandparents to fill in the shoes and try and help us out. But those sort of distinguished betweens were so apparent and clear to me that I said I would want what I had to be like a copy paste scenario for my siblings. And at no point should they feel the lack of someone making such a big difference, or, having like a gap to fill in their lives. And of course, I can't fill my mom's shoes or my dad's shoes in any manner, because a parent is a parent and I'm a sibling. But as much as I could, I wanted to not rise to the occasion to be this big person. I just wanted them to have normalcy. Because I think that's a very important factor of growing up. Just the fact that something about this situation is not normal, and they're going to already get questions from their friends and, already get some questions from their school and teachers. I just wanted to fill in a place where something feels like home. And I think it was as simple as me, and I love them dearly. I still do, and it grows every day. So given a choice, I'd do that again.
Wonderful. And I'm sure that somewhere in terms of, about not having to worry about yourself and about, wallowing in self-pity, for putting the energy behind your siblings, perhaps give you that sense of purpose and probably that inner strength that you were seeking.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And especially in moments where you feel, like I said, you're hitting rock bottom, I would just see their very cute, innocent faces and say, that's it. That's why I'm going to do this. Nothing else matters to me but them.
Yeah. Wonderful. That's very lovely. And then moving along to your act 2 and act 3, or scene 2 and scene 3, like you talked about, again, you showed a lot of maturity, when you kind of talked about the fact that how, we have so-called well-meaning relatives and close people around, right? Who kind of reach out to you, but uh, invariably, sometimes you really don't want that, right? I mean, like, oh my God, ab tumhara kya hoga, you know, you sometimes wish that they just leave you alone, right? And
तुम्हारा क्या होगा, तुमसे शादी कौन करेगा, तुम्हें accept कौन करेगा? I mean, the questions were endless. They were endless.
Right.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, you just changing the game and talked about, affirmations, positive affirmations, right? And you landed a job at a Big Four audit firm, which was, obviously fantastic at any point in your career. But then again, you had a bit of a roller coaster, which you've defined your life as a roller coaster ride. You talked about how you actually went down to do your master's, at Warwick, and you landed a wonderful job, but it had to be in the worst time, in the financial crisis, right? So the job never eventually materialized, and you came back, had to take work with an agency, which always unfortunately pay not really to the best, from a 48 lakh job, you probably landed up at a 2 lakh job a year, right? And that really blew your self-esteem, so walk us through that phase, and then how did you actually started journaling at that time, because that's what you did to come out of that.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's no easy feat when you're sitting in, I'm in the UK now, but this is what, 16 years ago, and I'm sitting in another room just like this, and, with stars in my eyes and dreams in my mind, and I'm trying to apply for roles, and I get a role. I crack the interview process. I get the offer. It's in my inbox, and all that it takes is, okay, here's when you need to come in, and it's almost like my benchmarks to getting a job now have changed now. I joke about it with my friends, ki, jab tak you don't get a desk to sit on, or your email address has not been made, or you don't get an ID card that you can swipe in and out, you don't have a job. Because getting an offer letter for me wasn't enough, and it was hard. It was harsher, I would say, to see the numbers go from there to like a complete decline to a 2 lakh job. And it wasn't easy. I think my best friend was probably, as we say in Bombay, pakawed with my constant rant of, what does this mean? Because I had a loan to pay. I had taken an education loan. I didn't know where that's going to get paid from. I had 7 years as per RBI, but kahan se aayega sab, and what am I going to do? How do I get to where I want to get to? And and this is like the holy grail of brand management, and it's snatched away from you, and then you start somewhere completely different. So it was not easy. I had to really reevaluate, what am I going to do with this role? And I think, again, I hit that rock bottom, and I said, okay, chalo, this is where you are. What are you going to do with this? And where does this take you? And how does this probably become a stepping stone to the next big journey or company you work in? But my team was amazing at the agency. We had a lot of fun. We all still keep in touch. We are like a little family. My mentors were amazing because I got a lot to learn from them. So I think somewhere I was trying to repurpose my purpose, and I think that helped in just making sure you go through wherever you are and in whatever role you are, because otherwise you'll keep sitting and whining about the fact that this didn't happen, that didn't happen, and then you're just going to be stuck. And then you wake up with that feeling, you drag yourself to work with that feeling, you come home after that feeling, and then I have another 5 days of the week with the same feeling. So it doesn't make you productive, because I think it becomes it occupies a large part of your brain in a day.
Right.
So yes, and then like I said, journaling and writing about it always helped me channelize how I was feeling. So yeah.
Wonderful. And then just kind of moving across to the last part that you kind of shared, that how eventually, even when you got success, you kind of started working with some of these global brands. And I must say that you've really worked with a very diverse set of brands. I mean, working from with an oil company to a toy company to a, like a B2B, a fintech company, right? Even when you were going through that journey and, in many ways being very successful, you still had this whole begrudging, that was there as a part of your life. Like, you used to still kind of externalize the problems and used to still blame people for your circumstances, right? But I think somewhere again, you kind of dove inside and started, this whole prayer and having faith. And that's when you felt that finally the healing process kind of caught up with you, right? So just walk us through that.
I think the healing process caught up with me much later in life when I actually got a mentor who very kindly offered to help and say, you know what, don't worry, lean on me and I'm here. But until that time, I don't think I ever had someone just help me in the moments of difficulty or confusion and help me in the moments where I was feeling the way I was feeling. So I think faith and prayer have always been a part of my life ever since I was small. And, this is thanks to my mom, my dad, especially my grandparents. It's such a normal part of our house. And, engaging in the little, ritual of a puja or something that just gives you that peace that there is somebody out there looking out for us. And this is not just my close-knit family, this is my ancestors and so on as well. So I think the healing came with this, mentor for me who offered to be the person to, lean on and get support from, as well as then combining that with the power of my faith and prayer, which then sort of accelerated the journey. Because all this while it was like, okay, here's the problem. Who do I ask? Who do I turn to? My siblings were obviously quite younger to me, and therefore they wouldn't be the source of any sort of tips and tricks. Now they do. Now we talk like we're all equal because we've all grown up. But at the time, it wasn't the case. Obviously, when it came to other family members, I wanted to try and keep them out of what was going on as much as possible, because I thought that this is ghar ki baat hai, so let's keep it inside. But I think at the end of the day, the healing didn't start then. There was a lot of turmoil and, emotional upheaval at the time. But it was sustained, like you rightly said, because I had a purpose and I had my wonderful siblings to look at and say, that's it. This is what I'm doing it for. With that came a lot of the ups and downs, choices, very hard ones. But I think healing is very important. It's otherwise you carry that weight, and I've made that mistake. You carry that weight a long time. You don't make your peace with it. You don't accept it. That's where it all begins. So I think when that process started, it helped immensely, because the way I feel now, if I spoke to my younger self, like 10 years from now, who was, 27, 28 years old, she'd be a completely different person to the way I feel now, just with the peace of mind or the acceptance or everything that's happened. So I would definitely say that, anyone going through anything, healing and accepting everything is the first step. Find somebody you can lean on. It's so important to talk and not keep it all inside. And I've done that. I've made that mistake. It doesn't help. And just take it one day at a time. That's the best way to heal. Don't plan 25 days ahead.
Lovely. And you very nicely distilled your entire your journey, your 4 acts or your 4 scenes into this lovely acronym called Braver. And and that's when I really thought that before we jump into the technical side of what Nupur does, I think we should really set the context and then try and help the audience understand, the community understand what you've kind of been through. And why Braver is really, your mantra that everybody can adapt, and adopt to kind of, win in life, So just walk us through that.
Look, I'm being very honest. My mentor and I, we've had tons of conversations, and this acronym was a large part of the outcomes of those conversations. And now I can say Braver is a model you can use in hindsight. And I honestly wish I knew this as a model when I was 14 and 15 and 16, because it changes your perspective, And one of the things he says very fondly, which I will never forget, and this is like, out there for anyone who's trying to find the positivity in a day, is, we often ask the question, how full is the glass, right? Is it half full or is it, we often say, is the glass half full or half empty? What he says is, change the question and say, how full is the glass? So you completely take out the negativity from that statement in the first go. And the answer to that is still going to be, yes, it's full, for example, or it's half full. And that's not negative, And I think that stuck with me a lot, because now in hindsight, braver can be something people today relate to, reflect on. It's not easy to do. Let me also say that. When you're in the moment and everything is going against you emotionally and you're trying to get somewhere in your career, but then you have these challenges and you don't know what to do next, it is not at all easy. That moment of clarity does not come. But if you're persistent and if you're very sure that this is not my reality and I have to change it and I'm the only one who can, then it changes and your persistence makes that clarity come. So all I would say is, don't give up. Braver is a great model. I have come up with someone's help in hindsight, and I honestly wish I would have known it. But for anyone out there who's facing anything really, really challenging, or, is not liking where you are in life right now, it's a moment to stop and reflect on how you can change the lens of which you can look at your life in.
Yeah. And I think it'd be great if you could just maybe spend a minute and just walk us through the expansion of braver, the bold, resilient. If you could just, talk about that.
I will have to look up my acronym again because I don't remember it as well as you do. But
I'll help you with the first one is for being bold.
Yes. So bold in terms of making choices and decisions. I think one of the things I've realized is keeping all your consciousness is alive and your eyes wide open. If you decide I'm going to, let's say, eat this, do it with your eyes wide open, knowing I'm eating this. Is that good for me? Is that bad for me? What are the outcomes? And as long as you're, bold enough and have an open mind to make that choice, you know what's coming. A lot of times we don't. And we always say, right? We say, oh, I didn't have a choice. But remember when, someone holds you at gunpoint and says, well, do this, or you still have a choice. If you don't want to do it, the other choice is you let him do whatever he has to, whether it's pulling the trigger, whether it's continuing to threaten you, whether it's whatever. So be bold to make a choice because that directly impacts you, eyes wide open. That's the first one.
And the next few is like being resilient, being aware, values, empathy, and reinvent. Maybe you could touch on about values and empathy. I really found them very interesting.
Well, values, I think, are something that grounds me. And I would say to a large extent of the people around me, it's sort of similar. And values doesn't always have to be embedded in your faith or religion. It could just be your own principles in life. It could just be what you feel about how you want to lead a life or how you want to set an example for other people. And I hold them very close to my heart because my values are family first. And that has never changed since the age of, I don't even know how young I was. Keeping the faith and having that as a discipline in your life, because I feel like that does give me a lot of peace. And I think empathy, because, there are very few people who will actually take that leap and put themselves in your shoes to try and feel, even for a moment, what it is to be you. And there are very many people who will actually look at you and pass judgments or comments or all sorts of statements to say, this should not be the case or that should not be the case. But an empathetic person, and more so, I think a compassionate person, is someone who wants to know that, okay, this is what is happening. Let me understand why. Let me understand what's really going on. And this is not a call for pity at all. This is just to say, I've put myself in your shoes for 2 minutes, and you know what? It must be really hard. And that's why I feel like, because I got it from a few people, of course, my parents, my elders in the family, but not from many people I would have expected it from. In fact, they were the ones passing the statements and they were the one making the comments. And I've accepted that today because it's a part and parcel of learning. But being empathetic, I think, is a very big quality. And you do someone so good and so much good, in fact, if you're empathetic, because someone then just knows that there was someone here who just understood for those 2 seconds what it was like to feel and be me. So I think it's a very important quality in leadership, in working in teams, in the corporate world, at home, in relationships with your friends, your family, your partners, in everything.
Absolutely. And I would imagine even in marketing, because you got to empathize with the customer and the insights
All the
that they have.
time. All the time. All the time.
Wonderful.
Customer is
I
king.
think this was lovely, and I think I would now like to just shift gears, and there's so many questions on the community, which are really, I would say, the technical questions, but I really wanted to touch upon this. So I hope we can continue, Nupur. Not a
Yes,
problem.
absolutely,
Yeah.
not a problem.
All right. Okay, great. So so first of all, I mean, there's so many greetings. I just didn't want to kind of break the rhythm, but the people have just all kind of shouted out there, saying hello to you. But Deepak says, and I'll start with that. He said, "So well said. Peace and happiness." On that note, would love to hear your thoughts on personal branding. I think authenticity is key to building a personal brand, which makes you feel happy, peaceful, and fulfilled. Would love to hear your thoughts and feedback, on this whole area.
Deepak, thank you for that question. 100 million% I agree. Being authentic and being you is everything that it takes. And, the more you are yourself, the more you are your own personal brand. And I'm saying that because there are a lot of people who try and copy what other people have. They try and sort of do things that are not coming naturally to them, or they don't have as an inherent skill or a quality or an attribute. And so from a personal branding point of view, you have to be your own person. And you have to, if, for example, in marketing, there's a large part of communication, there's a large part of creativity, there's a large part of number crunching, there's a large part of analytics that comes with the number crunching. Know where your strengths lie, know where your areas of improvement are, because obviously as a marketer, you need to have all skill sets, but be authentic and say that, look, I know these things and I'm a master, like a pandit in it, and there's nothing wrong with it. And these are the 5 areas where I need some help. I need mentoring, I need improvement, I need training, I need guidance. So yes, absolutely. Personal branding starts from being authentic, and you are absolutely right. The more you are your own person, the more different is your own brand.
Wonderful. So there's this question from Arman. Arman, he says that, ma'am, you've hobnobbed with some big global brands. Any secret sauce or common moves you've seen that seem to work like magic in building a brand? And I think there's a pretty nice response also to that by Sanjeev Patel. He says that, Arman, from listening to Nupur, the secret sauce seems to include her authenticity and integrity. You touched upon that. To every role, they get not only her experience and intellect, but her wholehearted commitment. And of course, he suggested that you should listen to your TED Talk. So back to you, Nupur.
No, so Arman and Sanjeev both, thank you for your comments. Arman, I would say that there is no secret sauce. The good, and that's the good part, because when you have a secret sauce, human nature is to try and apply that secret sauce everywhere. And it doesn't work. When you're in different markets, different categories, different market dynamics. For example, I can give you an example of, let's say, when I used to work in Castrol. Now, Castrol is an engine oil. It's not a conversation you have over a coffee with your friend saying, "Aajkal tum kaun sa engine oil use kar rahe ho?" You don't ask that question. You usually talk about other interests, especially when it comes to products and services. So it's a very less, say, interesting category, but you want people to engage with it, right? And so in a market like India, for example, it's a very do it for me, choose it for me market, where your mechanic or your driver or somebody else will decide for you what's the best engine oil. As a consumer, you would never go up to a mechanic or a workshop and say, put Castrol 10W30. That doesn't happen. Similarly, in the West, it's a very do it yourself, choose it yourself market. So in the UK, for example, there are workshops, but they're all OEM workshops. And, you go into a Costco or a Tesco and pick up the 10W30 yourself because that's what I want. So with the market changing dynamics, that's what I'm saying. There's no secret sauce. So I can't apply this logic to, my time at Mattel with Barbie and infant toys and kids. I can't apply that to Disney and my role there because there is no one sauce. But the only thing I think, which is a common thread everywhere, is you have to know the consumer's heartbeat and the customer's heartbeat. That governs all your strategies, all of your brainstorming, all of your thinking. And that is actually where the secret sauce lies for that specific market, that role, and the challenge you're trying to solve for.
The next question, I'm just conflating some thoughts and ideas or questions put in by Selvin, Nirmal, and Alavia, where they're really trying to understand that, talk us through some brands, that have really built a wonderful brand in the long run, which you think is a wonderful study. And then again, let's talk about a brand which has been able to reinvent itself, made itself contemporary and, relevant to a different audience. So some thoughts on that.
So let me first share that all answers, it's a copyright, huh? All answers that I'm going to share are as an observer and as a person who's experienced those brands. I'm not representing any company here. No. So this is from my time at Mattel in Barbie. And, I have been a consumer of Barbie. Okay, I have grown up playing with Barbie. My mom never wanted me to have one for I don't know what reason, but I got gifted one on my birthday. And that became like the biggest day of my life because Barbie was such a big fad at the time, right? And the brand built itself. It was built by Ruth Handler. For all of you who watched the movie now know that. So Ruth made Barbie and named her after her daughter. And she made her as a symbol of aspiration, of something girls can aspire to be. Because this was in an era where you didn't have women aspiring to be big things or being in big jobs and having big careers. A woman's role was very defined. And so she made the doll. Now, over time, what happened? The sales numbers started kicking in. These are your targets. This is what's happening. And the fun part about doll play is changing the doll's clothes and making her look different for different occasions, right? Now, while that is the mindset of a consumer, what ended up becoming over time is that Barbie became this figure of vanity, this symbol of you just want to dress her up. A lot of mothers in our focus group insights also said things like, I don't want my child to think that this is the only way to live, where you just focus on fashion and looking good and, looking pretty. A lot of feedback that we got also was, I don't want this person to be a completely blue-eyed American Barbie. We don't have blonde hair. We don't have blue eyes. Where is the doll that I can relate to? So the brand had to really sort of think about its reinvention in a very different way. One, to break this myth that this is about vanity, because that's not what Ruth Handler started the brand with, but it somewhere became like that because accessories and, toy sets of I'm a dentist, I'm a fashion designer, that all became the biggest items of sale, right? And so somewhere that brand evolved into something it wasn't meant to. And so when the reinvention happened, the you can be anything tagline came up, where anything has a blank, which means as a consumer of Barbie, whether boy or girl, because it's very inclusive now, you can fill in that blank with anything, right? So you want to be a vet, you want to be a yoga instructor, you want to be a chef, you want to be whatever, that blank is for you to fill. And it took a long time to sort of change that. So the careers line was launched where Barbie is someone as a career person. So she's everything from even like, taking care of a dog, like a dog trainer, to like a yoga instructor and a gymnast. So different interests and careers were showcased. Mattel also launched Barbie in more nationalities. So you will now see a Barbie who looks like she's from Africa because she has a nice hairdo. She looks like she's from China. Barbie in India, for example, was just the same looking blue-eyed Barbie with a sari. And that doesn't work, right? So they started changing Barbie in a more inclusive way to make it more relatable to the child who's playing with the doll. And the third one, which was huge in inclusivity, was no sizes. So you also have a Barbie that's slightly healthy, and that's okay. There's no body shaming. There's no perfect figures anymore. There's no perfect vital stats anymore, because those kinds of things made Barbie go in a very, very wrong direction. So I think one of the brands, to your question, to reinvent itself would definitely be Barbie. I have obviously worked on the brand, not as long as some of my other colleagues, but I have worked enough to see that this is what happened. This is what, the memory of Barbie has been, this is how it then became this figure of whatever vanity and all sorts of negative things that the brand never was supposed to be. And then what the brand and the company had to do to sort of reinvent themselves to sort of make it more acceptable. And obviously the Barbie movie is a great showcase of everything Mattel has now accepted, and gone and said, well, here's what we're doing now. So I think that's a nice cherry on the cake.
Wonderful. And I think it's, obviously you feel pretty proud when you see a brand that you work closely with, just
absolutely.
kind of, reinventing and, just kind of, being in the race all the time, right?
100%. Absolutely.
So I'm just going to try and shift it to a slightly different direction. And, again, based on some of the conversations in the community, people are asking about personal branding. How is it different from, corporate branding, in that sense? Because, when you're building yourself as a brand versus you're building yourself for a corporate, right? And I think therein some tension comes in. There is a little bit of an issue because it's easy to say be authentic when you're talking about yourself as a personal brand. You'll obviously try to, walk down the path that you really truly believe in, But the moment you're going towards a corporate brand, you start having, issues, right? Because you're sometimes building a brand that you don't necessarily believe in, right? But at the same time, it's very important to be authentic. A very interesting example was how a friend of mine, she actually, got a job in a leading, coffee chain. But eventually they realized that she doesn't drink coffee, and then she said that, listen, I mean, by that logic, a lingerie marketer will never, be somebody who's a male, because he obviously will not understand. Of course, today's times are very different. We have a pretty interesting time that we're living in. But, and then again, for example, I mean, would a non-smoker go and sell cigarettes, So how do you try to reconcile these things, especially personal branding, being authentic, and then you are talking about being a corporate brander, which is about being authentic and empathetic. Just walk us through that.
It's a very good question. Okay, so let me divide that into two parts. One is part A, where I think we need to evaluate where we are on this journey. For example, I don't drink, I don't smoke. And if tomorrow, let's say, an alcohol beverage brand offered me a really great role, what would that do to me? So I think I need to first take a stand and say, okay, let me reflect on this. Because I don't do these things, what does that mean if I'm representing an organization that does this? Does that go against my own values? Will I be able to perform at my work? Is it so personal that I will have some clashes internally, more emotionally, with my authenticity and with the identity of this brand? If the answer on that reflection is, I think I'm going to have a tough time, because I'm going to be, let's say, making marketing campaigns or, making communication campaigns for something I just don't endorse as a lifestyle habit, then the answer is, let me not take the job, however amazing it is, because your performance, your productivity, and your personal brand will show through, right? And that's option A. Option B could be, well, I don't do these things, but hey, I'm great at marketing. I can make some amazing campaigns and, communication strategies for this brand and take it to the next level. So while I don't endorse it, I will learn to say, this is not what I do, but this is my work. And then you just sort of come to a stage where you say, yeah, sure, I accept it. I don't, right? And it still maintains your personal branding, because you are not somebody who maybe engages in something like this. But because you're so good with what you do, there's nothing wrong in extending your skill set and expertise to making that brand go to the next level, because it's work, right? That doesn't mean you suddenly started endorsing it. So that's one bit. The second bit that I would definitely say is, any one of us working with big companies and big brands always represent that company or brand in some way. So if you attend a conference, let's say you attend as I am X from ABC company, right? And therefore today there's a lot of sensitivity on places like social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, on what you say about what you personally feel. Okay. And platforms like LinkedIn are places where you are seen as a representative and face of an organization that you work for. And therefore, saying something which can hurt sentiments, can hurt interests, like there are a lot of people for DNI and against DNI. There are a lot of people who support pride and against pride. There are a lot of people who sort of also spew a lot of negativity and hate, right? But as a representative of an organization, you have to be conscious that this is what my organization's brand attributes are. These could be my personal ones. But on a platform, am I sensitive towards what the others are saying? And am I then representing my organization correctly? Because then no organization would want to have any representation on someone who is probably partaking in things they wouldn't, right? And so it's a fine line. And I'm sure it is challenging and difficult if you really feel very strongly about something. But my recommendation was, especially in moments like these, sleep over it, because don't act on it on instance and, on impulse and say, okay, I'm going to just put something out there. I just didn't like it. Because believe me or not, interview screening processes, people looking at you as a candidate for the next big role, they have intelligence and agencies who actually go through all of your social media profiles. And if you've said something with lots of profanity, or you've said something which has spewed some hate, it comes up as red flags. And this is not to say it's wrong or bad. Like, you could have supported a cause for all the right reasons. But these are just a few things people look at saying, well, this person is very outspoken and there's nothing wrong with it. But what happens if it's about our organization? And then I don't know. The question could be, are you willing to take that risk or not? So I think it's a lot of self-reflection, carving out your own authentic identity first, and then making your peace with then whatever choice you made. Like I said, eyes wide open. This is what I'm doing. This is what it comes with. These are the risks, and that's what I'm going to do.
Great. I think that was a very nuanced, thought through, balanced answer, to really about walking that fine line. And I'm going to push this further, because I love the way you kind of handle this thing. And if we double down today, I mean, now suddenly you've got marketeers who've got choices to make. You talked about sleeping over it, right? You've got choices to make because you think that you have to attract certain sets of the audience, which is probably different from where your original audience, is lying at, right? But then, somehow the value system of the new audience is going to be different from what your current audience is. So how much can I stretch the brand out, right? And I think the whole tension that I'm referring to is really the challenge that you see happening with all this wokeism, that's coming in. I'm not making a judgment. I'm just making an observation that you do have brands, especially I think in the Western world, who seem to be really kind of deviating away from what the original brands was all about and trying to kind of embrace something else, much to the chagrin of their original audience. A great example would be what the whole pushback that we saw to the Bud Light campaign, right? Where, Bud and Bud Light especially, is an all-American drink. It's really, it's really never positioned itself as something which is very woke or sophisticated, and then you really had this whole, the whole lashback that the brand encountered, and you've seen the whole sales coming down. Some people have actually observed and said that this was really a marketer where they actually had a lady, and I think, probably the first example of a very senior woman marketer in the beer business, who decided that they had to kind of revitalize the brand by embracing transgender, and that ended up really upsetting the core audience out there, So you of course had this whole challenge to go through. What are your thoughts? And you also saw something similar happening with Target. I know it's a very difficult, what should I say, area to kind of navigate as you think through. I just want your opinion on this.
See, that's I think a marketer's challenge is always the brand positioning and how to maintain that positioning in the minds of the consumer. Now, you and I both know that the target audience, as much as the brand is ever so evolving, consumers are now more tech savvy. They believe a lot more in platforms like a chat GPT for a lot of answers. There's a lot of automation in businesses and processes. So I think the consumer is getting more smarter, more, better educated. They're more sustainability conscious. There's so many other larger interests and issues at hand. Now, I think a brand's journey will have a lot of there's never going to be a brand that's always been high up there to say, humne ye kiya, brilliant, फिर ये किया, brilliant. It's never going to be this constantly increasing curve that you see. There will always be the lulls, whether they're seasonal, cyclical. There'll always be something that goes against your brand in terms of positioning, and someone's like said, well, we want to support this cause, and the whole market has turned against us. I think that's also part of the brand's evolution, because we can't sit here and probably say and pass a judgment that a brand can't take these calls. A brand can't support these causes, right? I mean, people in the transgender community, or, within the LGBTQ plus or pride community, have a reason to be there, right? And any brand saying, yes, I support it, doesn't mean that suddenly becomes bad. And, the core audience, I mean, look, there's a positioning and there's what the product does for you. So if it's a toothpaste brand and you've loved it, you love the taste of it, you love how it feels in your mouth, every time you go to a store, you make sure you pick up like 10 packets of it because that's you're loyal to that brand. And suddenly this toothpaste brand does something that is not entirely inclined with your interests. So let's say they've gone and supported an interest of saving the planet, and you're like, yeah, this sustainability, who cares? For example, right? As a consumer, maybe I'll be very upset, right? Because I'm like, why is this brand suddenly doing this? However, the brand is not thinking now. The brand is always thinking 10 years from now. And saving the planet, sustainability, your UN's, sustainability development goals, they are very, very important to know where we're headed. So if somebody decides today is the day I'm going to take the first step, yes, there will be a set of audience that just loses interest in you. There'll be backlash. And social media is a platform for opinions always, right? Because you have access to free Twitter accounts and free Facebook accounts, and you post a comment and tag the brand and you're done. But I wouldn't say that brands should shy away from taking such bold decisions and saying, no, I support this, or I don't support it and I'm going to be quiet, right? You'd rather not then say anything than say something and then have it go against you. The target audience is evolving, like I said. So your core audience is not going to be your core audience 50 years from now. It will be their children and then their children and their children. And those interests will evolve. So the third generation of this target audience will be pro-sustainability. In my house, I will have no plastic. I will have only recycled paper. And then what do? You can't be stuck in an era where these issues were not important. Right. So as the audience evolves, the brand has to evolve.
But some commentators, watching this would actually say that, listen, it's probably not the brand's job to wade into, this whole arena. For example, like you rightly pointed out, SDG, UN's, 17 sustainability goals, right? Very important. But that's probably not the job of the brand to kind of decide whether it needs to move in that direction, because these are just goals and objectives. Or for that matter, when you look at things like, like transgender, or you look at, let's say, the pride, that's socio-cultural issues. It says a lot of the time people just believe that the brand's job is just to simply maximize shareholder value, rather than really being, a mirror, in terms of trying to reflect what the society, what the UN, what the politics are really talking about, right? I mean, their whole thought process is that, in a way, brand is, exclusive from all of this, right? In that sense, right? It's living in a context which is independent of that, and which is really not the case, because brand, I think, is eventually immersed in the society that we live in, right? And I think that's where it kind of, I think these issues kind of tear you apart, because somebody might say that, listen, I'm trying to actually enhance shareholder value because I'm trying to think about the shareholder value from the long term, right? Is that what you're trying to say? Is that the way you're thinking about it?
Yes, absolutely. Because shareholder value comes from the belief in your brand. So as a consumer, if I believe that this is what you've done and it's right or wrong, for example, it's going to impact your brand. But you have to understand that there are brands that have not made it. For example, the share was growing. The trend was growing. The technology was growing and evolving. Unfortunately, did Kodak live up to that and catch on the trend? It did not. Right. Similarly, there are many, many brands like that, where I remember from a time of saying it's a Kodak moment, which was like a tagline in every household and a brilliant recall for the brand, to not knowing what Kodak is today for the younger generation of today is a sad decline of the brand. Now, who's to say that they didn't pick up on the trends and they decided to stick to their co-audience? Who's to say they didn't decide to tap into the consumerism that was evolving with shareholder value, with shareholder belief, with the belief that I support this, because there was also a lot of talk about how digitization is going to kill jobs and, it's going to take over. And we used to have these movies saying, abhi robots hi banenge, and, there's not going to be any human life left. I mean, you're talking about eras that have always had clashes from both sides, pro and con, pro and con, pro and con. So as much as the brand evolves, it sustains over time. Right, like I had one of my nieces the other day saw a picture of a floppy disk, and she's like, "What is this?" And I started laughing, because cassettes and VCRs, and it was a time for us. But look, the technology has evolved, and some of these brands have gone with that trend, tapped into a new shareholder base altogether of target audience and consumers to say, "I'm now going after the tech savvy people, and I'll figure out a program to educate the not so tech savvy people, so my product is accepted even with this sort of audience," right? Yeah. And so 10 years from now, that brand still lives, versus someone just sitting in that era. So I think we're talking about brand attributes, product attributes, as well as the interest of the society at a large. Somewhere you have to realize that the interests of the society are also ingrained in the same consumers and shareholders who believe in your brand. So when you start talking pro something or against something, if you're against something, my suggestion usually is, don't say anything. If you're not for it, don't say it. Because I think there's a risk of losing a large chunk of people who are so passionate about something, rather than having this random other social media conversation, then having your agency stressed out, you being stressed out of how to tackle the tarnishing of your brand happening live on all of your social media platforms, because you put out a statement which was not so pro the environment, or not so pro what's going on in terms of D&I or LGBTQ or whatever. And these are some very valid issues we have to accept, and we have to say that, well, if I'm not here to support the challenge or the issue that exists, let me at least be an observer to see where this is going, right? I think brands sometimes make that mistake of being very strong, extreme comments, which I think go against them, but they have to evolve. I wouldn't say that something like this is not supposed to be a part of the brand's journey. It's important to learn from these pitfalls as well.
I think it's a very interesting perspective. What I'm hearing you say is that if you don't align yourself to trends, you can actually become obsolete. And by trends, it's not just about technology trends. It's also about socio-cultural trends. It's also about, the political trends. And you have to just be relevant, and you have to be aligned.
You have to be
tread carefully.
Tread carefully. You have to be current. And remember, you're talking to people who are between, let's say your TG is male, female, 25 to 45, all geographies and metro cities in India, for example. Tomorrow, it's not going to be that. It will be their children, because these 25 to 45 will be in the 45 to 65 bracket. You've already got their interest. What about their kids and their kids and their kids and the generations that follow? And then if that fifth generation is all about chat GPT and AI, how does that immerse itself into your offering or product so it becomes acceptable to this generation? Otherwise, you're going to use big market share, and you're not going to be relevant, right?
Right. No, I completely empathize with your role as a marketeer, and also sympathize with you, because it's a tough job trying to balance this out, right? Just to kind of, yeah, absolutely. So just to kind of, bring this to a close, loved a couple of lines, which I'm sure only more than a marketer, a poet would have said. And you did something like this in your TED, which said that in this very room, everybody is going through something, right? And another, I think, a very nice haunting line was, be your own silver lining. Any closing thoughts around these lines?
Yeah, that I had like I said in my talk, I had written that when I was not in a great place at all. And I think in that moment of channelizing everything, that's what came out. But right. Be your own silver lining applies to any role, whether it's you in your relationships at home, with your friends, family, partners, spouses, even at work. Because like someone asked a question on personal branding and being authentic, it is your own silver authentic lining that's going to make you different from the other person. And, we have so much competition we talk about in India about getting the right jobs, getting the right promotions, so the more authentic and the more you play to your strengths while accepting that you have, 7 other things that you need to really work on. And that's okay. You're just being honest. No one was born to be the vice president of marketing ever. That person also had a learning curve, and he or she also went through those ups and downs to reach that and gain those skill sets. So sometimes all you need, and I've had some amazing mentors, sometimes all you need is just that one person to take that chance on you and say, okay, these 3 things, so I won't worry about them, but let me try and help you with these 4 things. So in your own capacity, if you can be a mentor to somebody, if you can be that help or guide to somebody that you didn't get, I never got it all the time. I had to really struggle. And when I did, it was amazing. And then it just needs that, one session, and then you're like, bus, I know my fundamentals, I'm on now, and honestly, sometimes that's all it takes. So my closing lines would be, maybe I'll add to that, be your own silver lining, and also maybe a silver lining to someone else who's looking for that hope and help, and personal or professional. So I think at the end of the day, we're all human, and we are not the VPs and MDs of our companies. We just need to talk to each other like you would in a normal environment without the titles, right? So helping everyone always gives you a lot of joy.
I think this was really wonderful. And, I think from the community, there's a thank you going out from Ritika. She's saying, amazing. Thank you for sharing your personal struggle. It definitely resonates with what I'm going through right now, So, Nupur, knowingly, unknowingly, you've actually touched upon people's life right now. Neha says, awesome case study. I mean, when you talked about Barbie, Tamanna really saying that, thank you so much, really put things in perspective. Sanjeev says, I really love the honesty with which you've been answering all of this. And Ritika saying it's an amazing session, So I think we've really spilled over, but I kind of decided to really kind of indulge in this because really love. I think for me it was personally 2 sessions. It was meant to be a technical session on branding, on B2B, B2C, but I think just hearing about your personal life struggle and how you kind of turn a difficult time into an opportunity, into really persevering through that. I think that really came through amazingly well. And thank you so much, Nupur, for really spending the 1 hour with us out here.
Thank you so much, Vivek. And thank you for everyone who joined and believed that I could impart something to you today. So thanks for joining. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much. All right. Wish you the very best, and do look us up when you're in Mumbai next.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Pleasure.